everybody, it's Ashley with you for Ink to Paper Saturday Showcase video. And this week's video I'm going to be featuring Beachy Keen stamp set and the coordinating dies. It's an amazing stamp set, multi-step stamp set full of palm trees, 4 amazing sentiments, and some great watercolor type of images that you can make yourself look like a watercolor painting artist. I'm going to show you how to do that in this video. I have an inspiration card that I made in the product introduction video for this particular stamp set and coordinating die collection, and I'm going to recreate that card, a version of it at least, during this video. And you can see my process on how I use stamps to watercolor, and not that much of a watercolor brush or anything like that, just to fill in. And really I'm just enjoying the process. Painting is so relaxing and calming for me, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope you do too. So let's take a look at the card and let's get started. In this video, I'm going to be recreating this card, a version of it at least, not exactly the same, but I'm going to show you how I watercolor the scene with the sun, the beach, the water, and then the actual sand, the land, and then the 2 palm trees, and then how you can incorporate a sentiment with that. Using the stamps as the starting point for watercoloring and filling in a little bit with the watercolor technique, but mostly just using the stamps and getting that watercolor effect. So that is the inspiration for this week's video. I cut. What I'm going to do is start with my watercolor A2 card base. Okay, I'm going to spritz it just a little bit. Okay. I'm going to add a little bit of bright buttercup now. So many different options in the stamp set with these images, so I'm going to use them to my advantage. When you first switch over to a new stamp, it's always best to start with spritzing it with some water, because it's newly saturated, newly inked stamp. And you can see here the dimension that I'm getting now. I can pretty much leave it like it is. I'm going to add a little bit more just so you can see how it looks with some summer sunrise. Okay, add that one a little bit to the top, a little bit there. And I'm not even really re-inking this one as much because it's going to be a little bit darker over here, so I don't need as much ink. So that's why I'm spritzing this a little bit more, because it's going to be a little bit darker. And if you get any extra, you just take a tissue or napkin and just dab it off. And now I'm going to move on to the blues. Now, since my paper has gotten a little bit dry, I'm going to spritz it again with more water on that section. And I'm going to start with Aqua Mist ink and that larger stamp again. And I'm not going to forget, I need to spritz my ink stamp, and then I'll just start going. I'm going to re-ink along the way because I've used a lot of that ink there and it's become saturated. Now I don't want a lot of blue here. The water line is going to be probably the thinnest of the colors, and I'm going to be adding. And now I'm going to go to a detailed stamp, so I think I'm going to use this one here. And I'm going to pull out the Hawaiian Shores ink. Spritz that up really good. And let's see if I can add a little bit more color with the Hawaiian Shores. next color is going to be for the sand, which is going to be fine linen. I like to start light and then work my way darker. Start with that same larger one here. And just start stamping, inking and stamping. To get my color transferred over in a watercolor effect. And I know some people are like, oh no, she is like, you know, her stamp is wet and she's re-inking everything with the, you know, a wet stamp back into her ink pad, or ink pad is going to mess up. I haven't had any problems personally, and I can always re-ink my ink pad. But if you feel like you are going to damage your ink pad, which I understand if you believe so, dry your ink, your stamp off, clean it off before you move on to the next stamp. And I'm not going to add any more. So at this point, what you need to do, of course, is let it dry or fill in. To fill in, you're going to need a brush or a watercolor brush, a brush and water, or a watercolor brush. I'm just going to use this watercolor brush here. And what you can do is simply pick the color you want and fill it in and add. So if I wanted to start at the top again and do the lemon tart, I can just ink right onto an acrylic block, use my watercolor, and then fill in if I want to do it like this. And that fills in the gaps if you want to. You don't have to. As you can see how it looks without it filled in, but some people like to have a complete look, and I just wanted to share how you can achieve that simply just by using your brush and the watercolor. And sometimes you might not even need much ink because it's going to pick up from the already stamped images that you've done already. So I'm filling this in here, and I just let this off to dry, and so that's why I worked on this first, because it's the largest piece of the card and it needs to dry. So I'm going to set this off to dry. Alright, next up I want to work on my palm trees. So I'm going to use the same technique for my palm trees. Alright, so for my palm, I'm going to start with the lighter of a green, because as I stamp the extra steps, it's going to overlay. And the darker hues will need to go on top. So I'm going to start with a limeade ice first. So I'm going to spritz my die cuts with water first to get them primed. The watercolor paper, this is watercolor paper that I've die cut them from. And I'm going to add my ink, spritz my inked stamp with water, and then just go ahead and line it up over my die cut stamp. And I use sometimes like a tweezer because it is water, so it doesn't have, and then move it around like that. If you need to, like, see how some of the ink moved, if you want to move it around like this, you can, and add some of the ink, or if you want to remove it, you can. It's up to you. I like to move it around as much as I can, but keep most of the ink on there. So my next color for the palm, I started with, let's see, with this limeade ice. So I think I'm going to go with Simply Chartreuse. It's my next layer. Okay, and so I'm just going to do the same thing. Ink it, spritz it, line it up, and stamp. Just trying to get that color transferred over to get that dimension. Alright, so this one goes here, and I'm going to decide between prairie grass. I think I'm going to use prairie grass. and then figure out my placement for everything. So of course, since it's watercolor, your watercolor card base kind of warps a little bit, but that's fine. I'm going to figure out where I want my sentiment. So I was thinking about using this banner from Banner Builders Basics here, and then having my palm trees come up there. So when I'm using this and I want to manipulate my stamp, I put it on my block first, straight, and then I move it to try to figure out where I want it. And this is a little bit too turned, so I just pull it up a little bit more to get it to follow the direction, the curve of the banner die cut. So I think I'm going to use a darker color ink, green ink, ripe avocado. I could use prairie grass, but I want to use ripe avocado. I want that dark hue to pop. And then I'm going to have that about right there. Put these on the ends. And this one's a little bit different, pretty much the same placement and the concept wise, but you can see I use different colors for the palm trees and changed up the sentiment a little bit, give it some depth and dimension and division line there, and added a little border around my card front. So alright everybody, that wraps up this week's Saturday Showcase video. I hope you enjoyed my video and my watercolor stamping process that makes me look like a watercolor artist. Maybe not, whatever you want to think, but nonetheless I had fun and I made a card, and that will hopefully brighten someone's day with these beautiful palm trees that I stamped and that great sentiment. So I hope you guys have a great Saturday and an amazing weekend and enjoy the rest of your summer, and I hope it's Beachy Keen. See you guys next week. Bye.